What if the most valuable quarterback in the NFL isn't the one with the biggest arm or the fattest contract, but the one most people weren't even supposed to notice? Right now, buried beneath the headlines and mock drafts, there's a quiet shift happening. One that has nothing to do with stat sheets and everything to do with power, influence, and leverage. And at the center of it is a rookie quarterback no one expected to matter, Shedeur Sanders. Not a first-round pick. Not a hype machine backed by billion-dollar marketing. Just a fifth-round name that's pulling global attention and doing it with zero help from the league. But here's the uncomfortable part. If even half of what insiders are whispering turns out to be true, the NFL might be sitting on the most lopsided value deal in modern history. A quarterback earning backup money while generating star-level engagement, and ownership knows it. This isn't just a feel-good story. This is chess. And the next few months could completely reshape how this league defines value and who really controls it. Because what's happening with Shedeur Sanders? It's not normal. And it was never just about football. On paper, it meant nothing. Just another late-round pick announced quietly, processed by the media, and discarded from conversation before the analysts even finished their coffee. Fifth-round quarterbacks aren't supposed to matter. They're placeholders, camp arms, developmental fantasies coaches whisper about and forget. When the Cleveland Browns used that pick on Shedeur Sanders, most shrugged. No post-draft breakdowns, no primetime coverage, just a name read off a card like countless others before him. The assumption was simple. He's not a threat, not right now, maybe not ever. But something strange happened almost immediately after that pick, something that didn't match the usual script. People started searching. Not just fans from Colorado or followers of his college career. People far outside the normal circles of football fandom suddenly wanted to know more. Clips surfaced. Jerseys sold fast. Instagram reels, TikTok edits, breakdowns, reaction threads. The kind of buzz you typically see when a top 10 pick goes viral in preseason. But this wasn't a top pick. This wasn't hype served on a silver platter. This was something else. And it didn't come from the league or the team. Came from the outside, organically, instinctively. That alone raises a red flag inside NFL front offices. The system is built to dictate attention. The draft sells storylines. Free agency moves headlines around like chess pieces. But this broke format. Shedeur wasn't being positioned as anything. He was just becoming it through fan behavior alone. While most rookies sat quietly in the background waiting to be introduced, Shedeur entered the league already carrying a global following on his back. And suddenly, the same machine designed to shape the narrative was a step behind. At first, they tried to ignore it, do what the league always does with unpredictable momentum, wait it out, treat it as noise. It'll settle down, some said. Social media hype doesn't mean real value, others insisted. But the numbers weren't cooperating. Search trends kept climbing. Video views kept multiplying. And jersey sales, they didn't just pop in Colorado. They lit up markets where Cleveland gear had never moved before. From New York, from London, from Tokyo. Orders came in with one name on the back, Sanders. That wasn't normal, and that wasn't supposed to happen for a fifth-round backup. Now here's the thing about attention in the NFL. It's never just attention. It's money. It's leverage. Visibility is currency, and smart franchises know how to spend it. You can be a project on the field, but if you're an asset off of it, there's a conversation happening behind closed doors. And that conversation was already underway in Cleveland ownership meetings. Not about how talented Shedeur could be someday, but about whether this late-round contract just accidentally became one of the most efficient business moves in the NFL. But let's go back to those early days post-draft. No one wanted to say it out loud, but fans weren't waiting around for permission from analysts or GMs to invest in this kid. They just did. That's one of the earliest signs that something bigger is brewing. It's rare in sports for a player not named Brady or Mahomes to create emotional momentum through presence alone, before a snap is even played, and when it happens, executives notice. Because it speaks to something immeasurable on scouting reports, cultural gravity. And that's exactly what was forming. Quietly, fast, expanding outwards. No performance yet, no game film. But somehow, Shedeur was already triggering reactions that first-rounders hope to generate years into their careers. That's when analysts started to glance back at the draft board. That's when team executives pulled up the jersey sales reports and started asking very different questions. The old logic said, late picks take time, you'll know if they're worth it in 3 or 4 seasons. But that logic doesn't account for what happens when someone walks into the building already carrying brand equity. For most rookies, the fan base needs to learn to care. In Shedeur's case, they already did. And that flipped the entire equation upside down. Because here's what no one in the media wanted to admit. Shedeur didn't arrive at zero. He entered with momentum, a fan base, a digital footprint, a cultural prominence that even half the starters in the league still don't have. He came and postured like a star even when the system labeled him as an afterthought. And when a player steps into the league with that kind of outside pressure already converted into measurable engagement, the traditional rules stop applying. Draft position doesn't matter, public perception takes over. What's even more baffling for insiders was how none of this was orchestrated. There wasn't a national media rollout, no massive Nike campaign, no carefully staged narrative from the team. This wasn't the usual machine trying to prop up a young quarterback for marketing. This was all real, all fan-driven. He didn't need to earn attention inside the league. He brought more than enough of it with him from the outside. And that's where things get uncomfortable. Because when that many people move emotionally and financially, before the league itself does, it doesn't just create buzz. It creates pressure. Silent, invisible pressure that lives in boardrooms and on spreadsheets, pressure ownership cannot ignore. The more time passed, the clearer that pressure became. While most late picks were quietly adapting to playbooks, trying to find parking at training camp, Sanders was already shifting conversations at the executive level. Not because of hype, but because momentum doesn't need approval. It just needs data. And the data was becoming impossible to ignore. That's not how it's supposed to work. And that's why this story was never going to follow the normal script. From the outside, this all looked like hype. A social media moment. A kid with a famous last name riding the wave of college stardom into the NFL spotlight. That's the easy assumption. The safe one. The kind that keeps everyone comfortable with the idea that late-round picks don't make noise unless they do something spectacular on the field. But what separated Shedeur's rise from the typical off-season flavor of the month was how long it kept going. Most viral moments in football fade fast. He didn't. The early spikes, search traffic, social clips, merchandise sales should have cooled. They usually do. But instead of dropping off, they intensified. And not in one market or one demo. This wasn't a swarm of local fans in Denver or Dallas. It was global. Fans in markets with no connection to Cleveland were buying Browns jerseys with Shedeur Sanders stitched across the back. No push from the league, no national ad campaign, just a name with gravity. That's when red flags started going up, not an alarm, but an interest. Because teams don't pay attention to casual attention. They watch for sustained momentum, and that's exactly what started showing up in the data. Trending analytics weren't momentary. They were rising, plateauing, and then rising again. Reports surfaced that his name was consistently appearing alongside established quarterbacks, vets who have been in Pro Bowls, led playoff runs, carried franchises. Sanders hadn't played a down in the NFL, and he was somehow already on the same search lists. That doesn't happen by accident. And this is where the story shifts from fan-driven interest to something far more calculated. Because now you're not just talking about headlines. You're talking revenue. You're talking corporate partnerships. You're talking franchise visibility expanding into territories most teams spend years trying to tap into. And when that expansion is tied to a player you're paying bottom-tier money for, that's a light going off in an owner's head. One that says, wait a second, do we have something everyone else missed? It's uncomfortable for scouts and analysts to admit, but the draft doesn't always get it right. Sometimes, what looks like a depth move on paper turns out to be an efficiency play no one appreciated until the returns started rolling in. Shedeur doesn't have to throw 40-yard lasers every week to be valuable. He just has to keep holding attention the way he already is. Because in today's NFL, attention is the currency that magnifies everything else. The league is built around quarterbacks, not just strategically, but commercially. They are the faces of billion-dollar brands. They're why networks schedule primetime. They're why sponsors sign deals, why international markets start following specific franchises. And usually, that attention comes at a cost. Top quarterbacks don't walk onto the field without a contract that starts at 8 figures. But in this case, the Browns are holding a uniquely rare asset, a quarterback pulling early-stage franchise equity without the financial overhead. That's why front offices started looking at this differently, not emotionally, but surgically. Not, can this guy start next year? But how has he already delivered this much without ever starting? The answer wasn't just Shedeur's pedigree or talent. It was something harder to replicate: cultural timing. College-wise, he had eyeballs on him long before he entered the draft. He came from a spotlight most players spend their entire NCAA career chasing, and he carried it differently. Calm, controlled, composed. And now in the NFL, that same composure is showing signs of strategic value. Because while other rookies struggle to build relevance, Shedeur has something you can't coach and can't force: influence. The influence to move merch. The influence to drive content. The influence to get NBA legends, culture icons, and sports analysts alike talking, even when the league stays quiet. It's that influence, more than anything, that can't be built overnight. And it's why this isn't just hype, it's leverage. But what really made executives pause wasn't just engagement. It was value to cost ratio. You have quarterbacks commanding $40 million per year who can't generate half this level of attention. And yet, here's Shedeur, on a rookie deal, generating daily headlines and fan loyalty for pennies on the dollar. In business terms, that's not just efficient. That's borderline unfair. Of course, none of this means he's a lock to be the next great starter. That part still plays out over time. But here's what the NFL rarely admits publicly: fan attention doesn't always follow talent. It follows story. And Shedeur Sanders came in with a story people were already invested in, before the league could package it, before the analysts could anoint it, before the branding teams could polish it. The blueprint was already written, and it came from outside the walls of team facilities. That's what's so threatening about it to traditional minds in football. When the momentum doesn't start inside the system, they can't control it. They can't shape it. And that's where things start becoming uncomfortable behind the scenes, because this isn't a prospect waiting for attention. It's a player forcing the system to adapt in real time. The narrative wasn't following league protocol. It wasn't waiting for preseason or press conferences or measured sound bites after practice. It was already ahead of the story, and the machine was struggling to catch up. And that's when league insiders started asking a different question. Not, why is this happening? But, how far does this go if we do nothing to stop it? The loudest part of this story might be the silence. You'd expect a team like Cleveland to tamp the brakes on speculation, especially when one of their quarterbacks comes with a $230 million price tag and a complicated reputation. Yet throughout all of this, every spike in attention, every viral stat comparison, every fan begging the team to look at what's right in front of them, there's been no firm correction. No talking points handed to the media. No coach stepping up to clarify the depth chart. Just quiet. Cold, measured, deliberate quiet. And in the NFL, that kind of silence doesn't signal confusion. It signals observation. Because while fans chant, analysts debate, and TikTok breaks down every preseason rep like it's playoff film, the people who actually control the future of franchises are watching from a different angle. They're not sweating over quarterback controversy. They're running math, projecting trajectories, weighing risk not in wins and losses, but in contracts, brand exposure, and investor calls. From people close to the situation, that's exactly what's happening inside the front office of the Cleveland Browns. And no one understands that language better than Jimmy Haslam. To Haslam, Shedeur Sanders isn't just a quarterback prospect. He's an undervalued asset producing outlier-level engagement at a cut-rate cost. That equation alone is enough to demand internal attention. In a league where mediocre veteran quarterbacks are paid like CEOs, having a media magnet player for the cost of an equipment manager is borderline absurd. There's no panic to act fast here, because just waiting might be the most profitable decision the team can make. Fans often think of NFL owners as football junkies or ego-driven billionaires trying to win at any cost, but that's rarely the reality. These are hedge fund brains running sports empires as long-term investments. Franchises aren't just team names, they're portfolios. And when people like Haslam look at players like Shedeur, the question isn't can he play? It's how long can we hold this level of interest before the rest of the league catches up? Analysts frame it as a football choice. Keep the rookie, ride with the veteran. But internally, it's about leverage. Shedeur doesn't have to be elite right now. He just has to keep this momentum alive and growing. Because every week the fire burns, it adds weight to the long-term picture. And that picture isn't about throwing touchdowns, it's about selling something. A future, a belief, a path fans want to follow. And in Cleveland, that timing could not be more aligned. The franchise has another defining project sitting quietly in the shadows, a new stadium. a multi-billion-dollar investment that will rely just as much on public optimism and fan loyalty as it will on wins. You don't sell personal seat licenses and skybox exclusivity off defense. You need star power, hope, identity. What Shedeur already brings before taking one meaningful snap could become a cornerstone for the next era of the business. He captures emotion. He animates a fanbase. He gives non-Cleveland fans a reason to wear Browns gear, click links, watch segments, tweet clips. That's what corporate partners pay for. And right now, he's doing it at a fraction of the cost of stars hyped by the league's machine. It's almost too clean to be unintentional. A young quarterback with composure, charisma, and cultural heat. A low-risk contract. A veteran in front absorbing pressure. And a multi-generational business expansion quietly being constructed in the background. Those pieces don't fall into place on accident. Whether it was part of the initial draft plan or not, ownership sees what it's holding now. And walking away from that early would be more than a football decision, it would be a financial misstep. The real value here isn't just about efficiency, it's about optionality, something only ownership truly values long-term. With Shedeur, the Browns don't have to commit now. He doesn't demand a headline-grabbing extension. He doesn't carry a cap-suffocating contract. He doesn't need the system to validate him for his value to keep rising. That flexibility, that freedom, is rare. Because if this goes the way it's trending, if Shedeur continues building cultural weight, fan engagement, and off-field relevance at this pace, the team ends up with not just a player, but a low-cost star in the making with national reach and time to develop. Other teams are paying tens of millions for bland competence. The Browns are quietly sitting on a quarterback who is triggering viral reactions every time he talks, and they got him on draft weekend while most people were flipping channels. And here's where that silence becomes strategy. The Browns aren't racing to anoint a starter. They're not overreacting to the buzz. They're just holding, watching, letting the market do the work. Every jersey sold, every podcast titled "Why No One Is Talking About Shedeur Sanders," every new fan who clicks follow on the Browns' socials because of him, that's a line going up. It's value accumulating. Quietly, patiently. The longer they wait, the more obvious the payoff becomes. And that's the part fans rarely see. They think the moment something exciting happens, the team is supposed to act. But the people running organizations like this, they know the game is long. And sometimes, the best move isn't doing something big. It's doing absolutely nothing, until doing nothing has created so much leverage, the other options look stupid by comparison. That's what makes this unique. Most teams scramble to protect the value of their high picks. They don't expect to find it buried in round 5. But now that it's there, Shedeur is no longer a what if. He's a what now? And ownership, especially someone like Haslam whose fortune was built on strategic planning and margin exploitation, isn't treating this as a fluke. Insiders say the data pushed this conversation forward. Not hype, not emotions. The numbers did the talking. And when you've got $1 million brand forming under a rookie-scale contract, you don't press fast forward. You build around it. You protect it. You let time do what it always does, drown out the noise and leave behind the value hiding in plain sight. The deeper you look into the situation, the more it starts to feel less like a feel-good rookie story and more like a glitch in the system. For a league that prides itself on structure, on earning your place, climbing draft boards, paying your dues, what's happening with Shedeur Sanders is breaking pattern after pattern. And the NFL hates when patterns break without its permission. Because normally, attention flows through the system in a clean, predictable order. Step 1, get drafted early. Step 2, perform. Step 3, get promoted by the league as a rising face of the franchise. But Shedeur entered through a side door, ignoring the traditional ladder completely, and now he's pulling spotlight away from guys who were supposed to be the future. The pipeline didn't just bend, it got skipped. And nothing makes the league more uncomfortable than that. It's easy to dismiss all of this as noise until you realize how much ownership loves noise when it comes cheap. People close to front office decision makers agree. The biggest factor that changed the internal tone about Shedeur Sanders wasn't speculation or storylines. It was the hard numbers. Search analytics showed that for weeks after the draft, Shedeur's name was popping up repeatedly in global traffic charts, rising above even some key starters in the league. Think about that. A fifth-round pick who hadn't thrown an NFL pass was trending next to multi-million-dollar quarterbacks who have led playoff teams. That's not supposed to happen. That's not a PR push. That's organic attention from people who care. Then came the jersey sales. Normally, rookie gear doesn't move unless you're taken high or go viral for something insane. But Shedeur's merch didn't just outperform expectations, it shattered projections. The official league shop struggled to keep stock in certain sizes. Data leaked saying demand was coming not just from Ohio, not just from Colorado, but from major cities and international markets that had absolutely no connection to the Browns at all. That's the kind of reach established stars pray for. And that's when this stopped being just a football story, because attention like that changes the math. It's one thing to draft an exciting young QB and hope he pans out. It's another thing entirely when you're paying someone rookie minimum wages and getting back engagement usually reserved for $200 million contracts. That's leverage. That's efficiency. And if there's one thing modern NFL ownership respects more than upside, it's value per dollar. From a pure business standpoint, the entire concept of quarterback value flips when you factor in cost. Because most of the league is bleeding money on signal callers they think might become stars. They're throwing 30, 40, sometimes 50 million at hope. Meanwhile, the Browns are paying Shedeur Sanders less than some position coaches, and he's already bringing in first-tier attention with zero pressure to perform yet. When you run that through a franchise owner's lens, it makes sense instantly. Not only does it reduce financial risk, it stretches development time. You're not forced into rushing the process just to justify the investment. There's no panic button, no media crisis if he doesn't start tomorrow, because the attention is already banked and the cost is locked in. That's the kind of combo most franchises only dream about. And here's the quiet secret behind all this. The lower the cost, the more patient the leash. That's how business works. When something is expensive, you start counting every flaw, every interception, every off week. But when the price is low, you can stand back and let the narrative breathe. There's space for composure, for growth, for storytelling. And that's exactly what Shedeur has been doing. No forced headlines, no public complaining, no wild proclamations of what he deserves, just control, composure, a slow build that feels somehow inevitable. Meanwhile, the Browns' front office isn't publicly tipping their hand, but insiders around the league are already hinting at what might be going on behind closed doors. No one's saying it out loud, but the longer this attention holds and grows, the harder it becomes to justify moving away from it, even if another quarterback checks more boxes on the field. Because from a total value standpoint, Shedeur is quietly becoming the better asset, whether he's starting or not. And this is where things get a little uncomfortable for traditionalists. For decades, draft position determined trajectory. Late-round picks had to be perfect just to stay on a roster. First-rounders were handed multiple lifelines. But this situation is exposing a different reality, that the NFL might be miscalculating how it assigns value in a new era driven by visibility just as much as playbook mastery. Because if you're an owner and you're staring at two quarterbacks, one who costs $45 million and moves the needle slightly, and one who costs peanuts and already has international branding momentum, which one are you putting your chips behind? It's not just about who throws a tighter 15-yard-out route anymore. It's who builds gravity, who gets people to care even in bad games, who gives you flexibility inside the cap and outside the boardroom. Shedeur is doing all three, and he's doing it way ahead of schedule. That's the unspoken part of the NFL's evolution. Media-driven leagues can't survive on performance alone, you need engagement. And even though engagement doesn't show up on the fantasy stat sheet, it shows up on the balance sheet, and that's where decisions start getting made differently. So now, the NFL has a strange riddle growing inside its own system. What happens when the cheapest quarterback on the depth chart has already created the most expensive kind of attention? The league doesn't love those questions. But owners, they watch them closely. Because in a league that sells belief, whoever can generate it the cheapest usually wins. If you didn't know better, you might think the Cleveland Browns were confused, caught between a rising rookie and a locked-in veteran. Watching things unfold with no real direction, just letting chaos swirl while figuring it out behind the scenes. But that's not what this is, not even close. This silence, it's not hesitation, it's calculation. Look at the pattern, not just what the team is doing, but what it isn't doing. No statements downplaying fan interest. No coach carefully reminding everyone that Shedeur is just developing. No executive muting the noise by waving the depth chart like a badge of certainty. And that's exactly the tell. When organizations feel threatened by momentum they didn't plan for, they almost always respond. They try to seize control of the narrative before it runs away from them. But the Browns haven't done that. They've just watched. And in pro sports, when a franchise watches this quietly, it's usually for one reason: they know what they're sitting on. Internally, the data has already started reshaping how Shedeur is viewed. Not through the lens of a scouting report or training camp tape, but as a business unit, a value asset, something with long-term weight. And as strange as it may sound, the smartest thing the Browns can do right now is nothing. Let the fans lean in. Let the merch keep selling. Let speculation live in the spaces where silence used to mean uncertainty, but now just means strategy. Because every week they do nothing, the value grows. This isn't the kind of player a team needs to market. He's already reached the public in a way no PR rollout ever could. What executives see here is simple. No cost, no pressure, no promotion needed. That's a dream scenario, especially in a league where most engagement has to be paid for. With Shedeur, the engagement is building itself. That's why the silence has held. A weak organization would have tried to smother the hype, to insulate the starter, to protect the status quo. But when you know momentum is trending in your favor, even before the player is ready, the move isn't suppression. It's patience. It's poker. Because every tweet, every YouTube video, every celebrity cosign adds weight to a story that's writing itself before the team ever has to play their hand. And if you pay close attention, you can start to see the signs that they are playing, just quietly. There's been no threat to the existing veteran quarterback. No narrative battle inside the locker room. No leaks framing Shedeur as disruptive or green. That's intentional. It's insulation. It gives the team a buffer, time to prepare, time to let the noise build into belief. Most rookies get thrown into the fire. This one, he's being placed in a slow cooker, and the long game is working. Because what happens when this kind of engagement keeps escalating without any real push from the franchise? Fans start writing the future on their own. They begin to believe they saw it first, that they were part of the story before it became official. And when the eventual decision happens, whether it's months or a year down the road, it doesn't feel like the organization made a choice. It feels like the choice was made for them, slowly, naturally, and inevitably. That's how you shift a narrative without ever saying a word. You let the market talk. And the market is talking. Analysts who weeks ago said this would fade are now doing fuller film breakdowns. Journalists have quietly stopped calling it hype and started referring to it as momentum. NFL insiders aren't just tracking camp battles, they're watching retail and regional web traffic, which, yes, teams monitor more than you think. Because when a late-round rookie's jersey sales show spikes across non-affiliated regions, it's no longer a niche story. It's a business development one. And Jimmy Haslam, he's built for this kind of play. He didn't amass billions by chasing headlines, he did it by identifying slow-burn leverage others missed. One of the cornerstones of that mindset is resisting panic, letting the data breathe. Haslam has reportedly told people close to him that business value comes when you own emotion, not react to it. That's exactly how the Browns are operating right now. Because if they rush, the window could close. If they force a narrative, it could backfire. But if they simply let the environment develop, they can take advantage of rare leverage without ever having to orchestrate the climb. And the moment the team officially gives Shedeur the reins, if that time comes, they'll already have an audience conditioned to accept it. Not as a gamble, not as a last-minute substitution, as an evolution. Right now, no one in the building has to commit. That's the brilliance of their current position. Shedeur's still cheap, still growing, still not a financial liability. So there's no reason to declare anything. And yet the fanbase is growing more attached each week. That kind of loyalty, forged before performance is proven, is something owners dream of. It's why sports brands fight so hard to humanize their players. And somehow, Shedeur did that before the league even gave him the mic. And all the while, the silence continues. But this time, it doesn't feel like uncertainty. It feels like quiet confidence. Like ownership staring at the board and seeing how every piece is slowly falling into place. Development time, unlimited. Public belief, growing. Cultural timing, perfect. Financial risk, near zero. When you break it down like that, the right move is obvious. You don't buy early, you hold, you wait. Because eventually the hype fades or the numbers back it up. And when the numbers come, and they are coming, no one will need a press release. The decision will make itself. And the value of waiting will speak louder than any headline ever could. Here's where the conversation gets uncomfortable. Not because it's controversial for the sake of drama, but because there's a pattern forming that's becoming harder to ignore. And once you see it, you can't really unsee it. Watch any breakdown of a hyped first-round quarterback. Watch the language used, the framing. The slow motion replays celebrating routine completions like their career-defining moments. Poise under pressure. Natural leader, you can just feel his command of the offense. It's part of the machine, the way stars get built in this league. Analysts turn average into excellent, and networks run with it because it sells. Now watch how Shedeur Sanders gets covered. Same situations, same type of throws, sometimes even better execution. And the reaction? Silence, or worse, minimization. He's still learning. That was expected. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Same performance, different soundtrack. And fans are starting to notice. This isn't about claiming some grand agenda or pointing fingers at specific names, but it is about acknowledging a pattern that's becoming more visible by the week. When a player puts together a clean drive, makes accurate reads, shows calm in the pocket, and gets almost no buzz, while other quarterbacks are praised for doing less, it raises questions. Not accusations, just questions. Why the gap? Some say it's draft position bias. The league has always protected its high picks. If a first-rounder struggles, narratives cushion the fall. He needs time. The system failed him. Wait until year 2. But when a fifth-rounder does well, the reaction tends to be skepticism. Small sample size. Let's not overreact. The benefit of the doubt only flows one direction. Others say it's something deeper, something tied to how certain players are framed based on factors that have nothing to do with the field. Background, name recognition. Even the way they carry themselves publicly. Players who fit the traditional mold often get softer treatment than those who challenge expectations. And Shedeur, with his confidence, his visibility, his cultural ties, doesn't fit neatly into any pre-approved box. That can create friction. And friction, in media terms, often translates to quiet avoidance. But here's the thing, silence can be just as loud as criticism. When you watch a young quarterback handle pressure with maturity, speak with clarity after tough moments, refuse to blame teammates or coaches, and carry himself like someone who's been preparing for this stage his whole life, and then see none of that reflected in national coverage, it starts to feel intentional. Not necessarily coordinated, but definitely selective. And that's when outside voices started breaking rank. One of the first to do it publicly was Chase Daniel. Former NFL quarterback. A guy with no agenda, no loyalty to Shedeur, no reason to stick his neck out. But he did. He went on record saying Shedeur was being put in tough situations and still executing at a respectable level. He pointed out the lack of help, the difficult play designs, the pressure that wasn't his fault. And most importantly, he said what few others in media were willing to, that the kid was playing better than people were giving him credit for. That moment mattered. Because when someone inside the system confirms what fans have been shouting into the void, it validates the frustration. It proves the gap isn't imagined. And it opens the door for more people to start asking harder questions. Since then, more analysts have started shifting tone, slowly, carefully. You can feel the narrative beginning to crack. Not because anyone admitted they were wrong, but because the silence became too obvious to defend. When your audience starts calling out the bias louder than your talking heads, eventually someone has to adjust. But here's what makes this situation different from typical media criticism. It's not hurting Shedeur. If anything, it's helping him. Because every time a national outlet ignores a strong performance, fans get louder. Every time an analyst brushes past a solid game, the clips go viral anyway. The audience has stopped waiting for permission. They're building the narrative on their own, through shares, reactions, and independent content creators who don't answer to legacy networks. And that's a problem the traditional media hasn't solved yet. They're used to shaping stories, used to deciding who gets pushed and who gets buried. But when a player already has cultural weight walking through the door and a fan base that doesn't need a green light to engage, the old playbook stops working. You can ignore him all you want. The people watching, they've already made up their minds. What's fascinating is how Shedeur has handled all of it. No public complaints, no cryptic tweets, no victim narrative, just steady, composed, accountable responses every time he's asked. That kind of maturity doesn't show up on a stat sheet, but it echoes loudly through locker rooms and front offices. And it stands in direct contrast to the quiet treatment he's received from some corners of the media. Because here's the unspoken truth. When you carry yourself with that level of discipline and still don't get the coverage others get for far less, people start asking why. And why is the one question media gatekeepers don't like answering? So the gap remains, at least for now. But it's shrinking not because networks suddenly changed, but because the audience refused to stay silent. They filled the void themselves. And in doing so, they made the disparity impossible to hide. Eventually, when Shedeur's moment fully arrives, whether it's this season or the next, everyone will have to acknowledge what some already knew. The story was always there. Some people just chose not to tell it. There's a moment when sports stops being just sports. When a player transcends the game and starts representing something bigger than stats or championships. That's where this story quietly crosses a line most people haven't fully recognized yet. Because when Dwyane Wade, a three-time NBA champion, a global icon, a man who's shared locker rooms with legends, speaks publicly about a rookie quarterback with genuine emotion, it's not casual, it's not promotional, it's personal. Wade didn't just praise Shedeur's game, he talked about his character, his leadership, the way he carries himself under pressure, the accountability, the calm, and if you followed Wade's career, you know he doesn't hand out that kind of respect lightly. He's been around greatness. He knows what it looks like up close. And something about Shedeur made him speak up, not as an analyst, but as someone who recognized a reflection of values he respects. That matters more than people realize. Because for a lot of fans, especially those who don't often see themselves represented at the quarterback position, Shedeur isn't just another prospect. He's proof that a different kind of leader can thrive at the most visible position in American sports. Confident without arrogance, poised without being robotic, accountable without being passive, it's a combination that feels fresh. And for many, it feels overdue. Representation isn't just about visibility, it's about how someone is seen. And right now, Shedeur is being seen as something rare, a young black quarterback who leads with composure, commands respect, and refuses to shrink, even when the coverage doesn't match the effort. That resonates deeply. Across communities that have watched this position be gatekept for generations. And when cultural figures like Wade validate that presence publicly, it creates a ripple effect. Suddenly, it's not just about football. It's about what it means for a young kid watching at home to see someone who looks like him, talks like him, carries himself like him, thriving at the highest level without compromising who he is. That's the intangible value no stat sheet captures. It's why the engagement keeps growing even when the national media stays quiet. It's why fans across the globe are buying his jersey before he's taken a meaningful snap. It's why this story refuses to fade no matter how many analysts try to minimize it. Because Shedeur doesn't just play quarterback. He represents something. And in today's culture, where authenticity wins and forced narratives lose, that representation builds loyalty money can't buy. The NFL can try to control how stars are made, but when a player already carries cultural significance before the league stamps approval on him, the power shifts. And right now, that power is sitting quietly on a fifth-round rookie contract, growing every single day. Football decisions don't happen in a vacuum. Behind every roster move, every contract extension, every surprising draft pick, there's a business calculation running in the background. And right now, the Cleveland Browns aren't just building a team, they're building a future that includes a brand new stadium and billions of dollars in long-term revenue expectations. That context changes everything. New stadiums don't sell themselves on defense or running games. They sell on hope, on star power, on the belief that what's coming is worth investing in emotionally and financially. Personal seat licenses, premium suites, corporate sponsorships. All of it depends on one thing: fans believing the franchise is headed somewhere exciting. And nothing generates that belief faster than a quarterback people want to watch. That's where Shedeur fits in ways most fans haven't considered yet. He's not just a developmental project sitting on the depth chart. He's a potential cornerstone for how the franchise sells its next chapter. Because when you're asking fans to commit to decade-long seat licenses and six-figure luxury boxes, you need more than promises. You need a face, a story, a reason to believe the future looks different than the past. And Shedeur already provides that before he's even started a game. His cultural reach extends beyond Ohio. His engagement numbers rival established stars. His presence generates buzz that most franchises spend millions trying to manufacture. And all of it costs the Browns almost nothing right now. From a business standpoint, that's not just convenient, it's strategic. Ownership understands this. Jimmy Haslam didn't build his fortune by ignoring opportunities hiding in plain sight. When you're planning a multi-billion-dollar stadium project, every asset matters. Every storyline counts. And having a young, charismatic, globally recognized quarterback locked into a rookie deal during the critical sales window. That's not an accident waiting to be corrected. That's leverage waiting to be used. Think about the timing. The stadium push is coming. The marketing campaigns will start rolling out. The franchise will need someone to anchor the excitement. And right now, no one on that roster generates the kind of organic attention Shedeur does. Not even close. That doesn't mean the decision is already made. But it means the incentives are aligned in ways that favor patience over panic. Every month Shedeur stays on that rookie deal while his visibility grows, the franchise gains flexibility. They're not paying star money yet, but they're getting star-level interest. And when it's time to make the real push for the new stadium, that interest becomes currency. Fans see quarterback battles. Ownership sees portfolio management. And right now, the portfolio says hold, because the upside isn't just about Sunday wins anymore. It's about what this player represents when the franchise asks Cleveland and the world to bet on its future. And Shedeur, he might already be the best sales pitch they have. From the outside, the Browns' quarterback situation looks like a mess. A highly paid veteran with baggage, a rookie with buzz but no starting reps. Media speculation swirling every week. It feels chaotic, unresolved, like a franchise that doesn't know what it wants. But what if the chaos is actually the plan? Because here's what most people miss. Shedeur Sanders doesn't need to start right now. He doesn't need to prove anything tomorrow. And the presence of a veteran quarterback in front of him, regardless of how complicated that situation is, might be the best thing that ever happened to his development. Think about it. Most rookie quarterbacks get thrown into the fire before they're ready. The pressure hits immediately. Every incomplete pass becomes a debate. Every loss becomes a referendum. And before they've had time to learn the speed of the league, they're already fighting for their future. That's how careers get derailed before they even start. But Shedeur, he's insulated. Deshaun Watson absorbs the spotlight. He takes the questions. He carries the weight of expectations, fair or not. And while the media focuses on the veteran, Shedeur gets something invaluable: time. Time to study. Time to adjust. Time to develop without the crushing pressure of being the guy before he's ready to be. That's rare in this league, and it's underrated, because development isn't just about reps. It's about environment. It's about learning at a pace that allows growth instead of survival. Shedeur can watch from the inside. He can see how NFL defenses scheme. He can absorb the playbook without the weight of wins and losses sitting on his shoulders every Sunday. That kind of runway doesn't exist for most rookies, especially quarterbacks. And here's the quiet genius of the situation. The Browns don't have to rush anything. Watson's contract keeps him in place whether people like it or not. That money is spent. So instead of viewing it as a burden, ownership can view it as a buffer. A paid insurance policy that buys Shedeur the one thing money usually can't: patience. Meanwhile, the fanbase grows more attached to Shedeur every week, not because of wins, but because of presence. By the time he's ready to take over, the transition won't feel forced. It'll feel earned, organic, inevitable. Most teams panic when their quarterback room looks uncertain. The Browns might be doing the opposite, using the uncertainty as a cocoon, letting their young asset mature while the noise stays pointed somewhere else. It's not pretty, it's not clean, but it might be smart. Because when Shedeur finally steps into that starting role, whenever it happens, he won't be a desperate replacement or a last-minute gamble. He'll be a prepared, developed, fully supported franchise quarterback with a fanbase already behind him. And that patience, it might be worth more than any first-round pick ever could. At some point, the math flips. And once it does, there's no going back. That's exactly where the Browns find themselves right now. Because walking away from Shedeur Sanders, whether through a trade, a new draft pick, or simply letting him fade into the background, is no longer the neutral option. It's the costly one. Think about what's already been built. A fan base that chose him before the team told them to. Merchandise revenue flowing from markets that had zero connection to Cleveland before. Global visibility that most franchises spend years and millions trying to manufacture. All of it attached to a player earning rookie minimum. Now imagine erasing that. You don't just lose a quarterback, you lose momentum. You lose emotional equity. You lose the fans who bought in early and believed before anyone else. And you lose the trust of an audience that's been watching, waiting to see if the organization recognizes what they already saw. That's not a football decision anymore. That's a brand decision. And brands don't recover easily from fumbling something this visible. Meanwhile, the alternative, drafting another quarterback, signing a free agent, trading for someone else, comes with its own price tag. Higher salary, higher expectations, higher pressure to perform immediately, and zero guarantee that whoever comes next brings even a fraction of the engagement Shedeur already generates. So what's really cheaper? Betting on the unknown or protecting what's already working? Ownership sees this clearly. You don't build billion-dollar empires by abandoning assets that are compounding value every single week. You hold, you protect. You let the story keep writing itself until the only logical conclusion is the one everyone already expected. That's the quiet power of this situation. The longer it continues, the harder it becomes to walk away. Every jersey sold, every viral moment, every new fan who clicks follow. It all adds weight that eventually makes any alternative look foolish by comparison. And here's the part no one wants to say out loud. The decision might already be made. Not announced, not official, but already locked in by sheer accumulation of value that no spreadsheet can argue against. Because sometimes, leverage doesn't come from negotiation. It comes from patience, from letting the world catch up to what you already knew. And right now, the world is catching up fast. So where does this leave us? A fifth-round pick nobody was supposed to care about. A fan base that showed up before being invited. A media machine that didn't know how to respond. And an ownership group quietly watching the numbers climb while everyone else argued about depth charts. This was never really about football. It was about value, about timing, about what happens when cultural gravity meets financial efficiency in a league that's never seen this combination before. And somehow, through circumstance, strategy, or pure cosmic alignment, Shedeur Sanders ended up at the center of it all. Not because he demanded attention, but because he earned it, quietly, authentically, without a single headline handed to him by the system that usually decides who gets to matter. And that's what makes this story so different. The NFL loves control. It loves shaping narratives, deciding which faces get pushed, which names get repeated, which jerseys get promoted. But every once in a while, someone slips through the cracks. Someone who doesn't need permission. Someone whose presence alone starts shifting the ground beneath the league's carefully constructed machine. Shedeur didn't wait for the draft to validate him. He didn't wait for analysts to approve him. He walked in with a following, with composure, with a quiet confidence that's impossible to fake and even harder to ignore. And now, the leverage has flipped. The team that took a chance on a late-round quarterback is sitting on one of the most efficient value plays in modern NFL history. A player who costs almost nothing but generates almost everything. Attention, loyalty, revenue, cultural weight, all of it compounding week after week while the rest of the league scratches its head wondering how they missed it. Years from now, people will look back at this moment and debate when the decision was really made. Some will point to a breakout game. Others will point to a press conference. But the truth? The decision was made slowly, invisibly, through thousands of jersey sales and millions of search clicks and one undeniable reality. You don't walk away from something this valuable. You protect it. And that's exactly what's happening, whether anyone says it out loud or not. So the next time someone asks you about Shedeur Sanders, whether he's ready, whether he's overhyped, whether he's worth the conversation, remember this. The league already answered that question. They just didn't realize it yet, because the most valuable player isn't always the one with the biggest contract. Sometimes it's the one nobody saw coming, the one who built an empire before anyone gave him permission, the one who made the system adapt to him instead of the other way around. And if that's what Shedeur Sanders represents, then the NFL better get used to watching from behind, because this story isn't slowing down. It's only getting started.